What up, world? Waxville in Seattle, Washington. You already know what it is. Welcome to Nick and Wax Soul Brothers, a soul and funk show through a European lens. We got Joel from George Semper Music Archive. Keep it locked. We'll kick things off soon. What up, Nick? We see you. Yeah. What up, Nick? Jay Zillionaire in the building. Lucky Brown in the building. We see you, brother. What's up, buddy?
Hey, man.
How are you?
I'm good, man.
Hey, remind me real quick. What time is it out there?
Oh, it's about 2 in the morning.
I love it.
Yeah, man. So,
I'm thriving at 2 in the morning.
Huh?
I'm thriving at 2 in the morning.
All right.
Yeah.
What's
up,
good,
Joel?
gentlemen? What's good, man?
How you doing?
Good to see you.
Yes.
Yeah.
How's my volume? Is it okay or too loud or is it all right?
Man,
You
you're
sound
crystal
good.
clear. I couldn't ask for anything more.
Good.
Perfect.
Good, man.
I see we got about 13 on the line. If y'all are ready, I'll go ahead and kick things off.
Go ahead.
I want to welcome everybody to Nick and Wax Soul Brothers. This is a show dedicated to soul and funk through the lens of Europe. We kicked off our very first show in 2021 with Malachi Trout. And what's interesting about the whole thing and taking us today is this gentleman right here in the lower right-hand tile, right? This is Joel from George Semper Music Archive. We've been talking for a long time. He is the reason that I connected with Malachi Trout and Dynamite Cuts, so I have to thank him for that. But this was around the time that I was discovering a new name. It was George Semper. And I was so amazed by this musician, this producer, this label owner, this composer, this Hammond B3 organ whiz, and the list goes on and on. As I explored and I continued to see releases from the George Semper, Music Archive, I was curious. Joel and I continued to talk, and I said, in 2022, we got to do a live stream. I want people to know about your pop's work, but more importantly, we want to know what you're doing with the George Semper Music Archive. Also, I'm joined by my longtime co-host, my good friend, Nicholas Retlid, the founder of Soul Tune Records. Nick, welcome.
Thank you, man.
Yeah. So we got about 8-9 questions. We got show and tell. I'm so excited. I want to welcome everybody. Thank you so much for viewing. Nick, go ahead and kick off the first question, brother.
Yeah, Joel, why don't you start by telling you who you are and what your connection to George is, and also what the George Semper Archive is.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely, man. So the George Semper Music Archives is the official song catalog, 600 song catalog, and master recordings vault and memorabilia vault of 300 masters of the late George Semper. And George Semper is my late father. And so we've reactivated his vault, his catalog. And he passed in 2009. So it took some time, but, we transferred tape, we cataloged, we sort of reactivated his label. And so we're a resource for everything George Semper.
Wow. All right.
And his collaborators, their stories, their material, their memorabilia as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so George, George was a Hammond B3 hero and in the jazz world, and very much known as an innovator and one of the godfathers of Bay Area funk in the funk world. And so he's known not just for stuff he wrote, but stuff he performed, stuff he produced over a 5-decade career. So that's pretty much what we represent and what we're a resource for.
Very cool. And just a follow-up question on that. Can you just give us like a little insight into what you've actually been doing, what it takes to kind of get this music out there? I'm sure there's a heavy lift involved.
Oh yeah, no question, man. But we've been so fortunate because, as you said, a lot of labels, the UK, US based labels have really kind of helped us along, and DJs. Shout out to a lot of West Coast DJs who really kind of put us on. Much like yourself, I don't per se have a background in music. Some, and certainly as a listening fan, but not as a collector. So the collectors have really put me on to, George's samples and his rare vinyl. And so what we did was we kind of had a scenario where a lot of George's material is considered rare vinyl. So it's kind of tough to get your hands on, it's $200-300 records. So what
Yeah.
we did, we kind of partnered with different labels to sort of fragment up and bring out, different versions of stuff that people could, get their hands on and continue to bring his music to the masses, And so that's pretty much what we've been doing. And we've done some cool stuff with that in different formats,
Wow.
Wow.
That's the triple threat right there.
Yeah, man.
Scheme. Yeah, Scheme actually motivated this one. Shout out Strictly Cassette. Beautiful design,
Shout out to my
beautiful
brother,
work.
Steve Richards.
So that's really, and the stories, man, the stories are fantastic. But George is from an era where fame was inverted. It was like who knew you, not who you knew. And so there's so many of these stories that aren't told, that haven't been talked about. And as we, George was fairly modest, in his later life as far as his music career. But as we learned more about him and discovered more about him through his music, through his masters, man, the stories are just incredible. So we set about to document those stories and release that material, whether it's his own stuff or stuff he produced. And that's, that's what we've been up to.
Perfect circle.
So another example.
You can't just hold that one up like it's a average record.
Oh yeah. So
that was a big one in the 90s in the European, funk scene.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. And this is a very popular record. It's been also synced. You could Norbit, the film Norbit, stuff like that. So, but yeah. So that's a little bit about what we've been up to, and so we continue to release unissued stuff and reissue material of his. It's more collected, but in formats that we can get it to the masses and creative stuff like the cassette.
So this was what I fell in love with. This was the one that did it for me from Dynamite Cuts. This bad boy right here with Joanne Vent. But like I said in the intro, I was just so mesmerized at all the different people that interacted with George throughout his career.
Yeah.
Could you just kind of give us a lens and touch on maybe like the milestone moments from even starting with the Kingsmen and kind of up?
Yeah, I will, man. I'm just going to kind of start with the Kingsmen and then go through some of those people we worked with. And I got a couple that both you guys are going to be really excited about, bro. So George, he immigrated from Trinidad to San Diego as a child.
Right.
And he inherited the beautiful, kind of post-World War II prosperous era when teenagers were created. So a lot of the music that influenced him was like big band and then, moving into jazz. But his mother was very cultured. Sybil, which is Sybil Music, is named after, was remarkably cultured and a well-traveled woman. So she had George, playing music at a very early age. And he had literally some of the best tutors in San Diego, man. And so he became kind of a child prodigy, a multi-instrumentalist that would win the local fairs and contests, And then as he went through high school, he developed a system that he would use for the rest of his career, man. Because he figured, hey, I own the auditorium, I got the band, I control the entertainment, I have power. And he developed his system that really kind of earmarks one of the big things he's known for as an innovator and kind of a model of the modern for the contemporary producer, because he did so much, But he developed that model in high school, and the band that they started was called the Kingsmen.
Right.
He would play amongst other bands, but they started this band called the Kingsmen. And one remarkable thing about San Diego was incredibly multicultural for the time. Unbelievable. Asians, African Americans. So the Kingsmen was a reflection of that. There were like Afro-Caribbeans, African-Americans, Celtic Americans, Anglos, Latinos, Latino Filipinos, shout out Tito Larry, but these cool, amazing guys. And so they started this band that became like known as the band, in the town, in San Diego, man. And they would win these battles of the bands, right? Well, they were copied by another group. And that group was the Portland Kingsmen that made the song Louie Louie, the most selling record of all time. Copied these guys. They tried to sue them. It didn't work. But what had happened was they had a deal. George was fortunate to start writing at an early age. So he was sought after as a writer-arranger, wrote a couple regional hits, Sandy and the Accents, stuff in high school. And, he was like the band leader in all the different bands in high school.
Right.
And he got a deal for them with Keane Records, whose primary artist was Sam Cooke. So the Kingsmen were going to be released on Keane alongside Sam Cooke. And this is
Wow.
1959. They go to Hollywood, they record the album, and all this stuff goes down with Sam Cooke. Keane basically goes bankrupt. So the project shelved for years that would eventually come out to be 2 records, or 3 records actually. Monkey Walk, which he co-wrote with H.B. Barnum, and who he's compared to a lot, and is one of his kind of contemporaries. And also with so so they released this, and also on Acclaim, another label. But the point is, they kind of came out later than they would have normally. But they spun off all these other groups, and they would get their buddies who would come in to do the to be the vocalists. So they would have the Chessmen and the Imperialites, and it gave George an opportunity to record with Marshall Chess. For example, the Chessmen, they have a song, "Why Can't I Be Your Man?" It's a very sought after song, and that's how they were influencing Northern Soul, because they had a lot of early soul records. So "Why Can't I Be Your Man," kind of a Motown vibe. But George worked with Marshall Chess, who, George was crossing paths with Charles Stepney. Marshall and them were going on to do Rotary Connection. So, then they go to Imperial. They record on Imperial, Luchad's Imperial, which George would go on to release a record on. And they just, they became known, regionally. And then George would go on to release this album called "Making Waves." This is a sealed copy, by the way.
That's a bad
So
boy.
this is one of the albums that recognize him as a Ovation, like the OG hipster. You know what I'm saying? Like, everyone's copying George. You know what I mean? And so this was produced by Marshall Lieb in 1965. It came out in 66. And Marshall was in a group called the Teddy Bears with a guy called Phil Spector. And so when Phil Spector went off to do Wall of Sound, Ronettes, etc., Marshall Lieb went off and hooked up with George, and they produced a series of artists, Patty Williams, George's solo project. And so this project, opened up the doors for George as a performer and gave him props as a performer, essentially, and would go on to be the record that so many people would sample. Here, let me just pull this out. So this is George with Jimmy Smith. So George became a Hammond hero because he, things he was innovating on the Hammond B3 jazz organ. And this is before the phone, man. This is before, this is the developing of what would later, be funk and soul, deep soul and funk. But, essentially, these guys were, sorry about that, guys. I mean, these guys were, and you actually can't see this, but, George booked like, just numerous artists from Ramsey Lewis to Jimi Hendrix and Little Richard. This is him with Ramsey Lewis, for example.
Yeah, he worked with a lot of
jazz. That's how he was able to meet a lot of people, like Les McCann. He booked Les McCann, Mary Wells. I mean, just pretty much everybody. So that helped George get known, and it's during that process that he ended up going to Las Vegas, playing with Ray Charles, developing his own act. That's where I was born, and he met my mother.
Okay.
She was a booking agent. My mother is Anglo-American, and she had a booking agency. And, that was a time that George was developing his skills kind of independently and starting to think about inner city review. I think is the other thing George was known for. He was known for being an urban entrepreneur, label, publisher, performer, producer on a project. All that. And so he does this project with Marshall. He goes to LA to record it, actually. They ended up recording it twice. And one is Don't Be Afraid of Love and It's Your Thing on Rama Rama. And they ended up doing this record on Capitol Records as well, which is where he met Marshall McQueen, and who produced Miles Grayson, Stuck in the Mud, and all that.
Sure.
But George goes back to LA in 1970, right? And it's like Black Power LA. He's in the groove because he's hot from Vegas. Also, George became the musical director for a lot of people. So it wasn't just his, after his solo stuff and his band stuff, then he becomes producer, and he'd already done arrangement and writing. Then he becomes producer and musical director. And I want to show you something my good friend Gerald Jazzman helped me acquire recently, and I'm so thankful to him.
Shout out to Gerald.
Yeah,
no doubt. So this actually is music. This is an acetate for a gentleman called Deacon Jones. right? Now, just like today, athletes then, they wanted to get down, so they would sing, man. They would start groups, shit like that. Well, Deacon Jones was in the Fearsome Foursome, the legendary LA Ram defense, and he was in with Merlin Olsen. So it's a very big deal. But what a really big deal is behind it, not just that, it was for Deacon Jones, not just that we've got a wonderful example here of George's transcribing because he read and wrote music, which is why we sought after him, because he had such production capacity. But the band that George hired, which is the other thing George is known for, he would put bands on all the time, man, was a little band that he got to back up Deacon. And the band, they were, just getting started and so forth. And the name of the band was Night Shift. And Night Shift would go on to be War. So some of War's first recordings in the original incarnation is on this acetate.
Wow.
So stuff like that George, and I got one for your boy. You were asking about that. So one of the things George did when he got back to LA, he did his solo thing. Then he started doing music direction, and he hooked up with one of the guys. He was in the Mary Clayton Act band as well, and so he was in the Mary Clayton Act band. He did all the touring stuff because he was doing a lot of work with A&M. So first incarnation of AM with Lou Adler. They had, Cheech and Chong. George was like their musical director on tour with Cheech and Chong, and also the other A&M artists. And at the same time, he's doing his own label and he's kind of getting that together. And one of the artists actually that George is one of the artists that George is, we'll break it out, is working with was Mary Clayton, and you can see him in the scenes from 20 Feet from Stardom and also in Soul TV. You can see him in those episodes playing with her. Tim, Tony Drake, amazing guitarist, Tony Riley, amazing influential drummer a lot of people don't know about. Uncle Basie, Nathaniel Basie Johnson, another big time guy, like produced Pure Funk, all these different groups for decades and decades, bassist, and Curtis Amy. And this is Ronnie Candy, Lovely Weekend. Here, shout out Record Shack. He just got some. So this is Lovely Weekend.
Yeah.
And this record here, sold 100. You got this one?
He was involved in that.
Well, I found out that Plastic Situation was possibly sampled by Dilla. And actually, this material is fire. And actually, it's funny because this was his first release on his label, sold 150,000 copies. Huge success, but he was on the road with A&M stuff. So he was like, but they did push the copies out. And then, so he hooks up his musical director with several acts. One of them is Johnny Taylor, Joe Tex. He was part of his LA band, his LA musical director. And another got your boy, Mr. Brent Wood.
Yeah.
George, but this is, you see, that's a test press.
Yeah, that's a test press. All right.
Hey, was that the one you said you were going to send me?
Yeah, no. That's not the one. This is the one. Even better. That's the master.
Oh. Yeah,
So one of the things we've done is we've restored all these masters. It's been a real process, transfer tape. Shout out KB. Thanks for your help. And we've gotten it done just with, my team and some real good guys. Shout out Alec Palau. He was like instrumental. Real amazing story about that. Mm-hmm. See, some of this stuff, that's a 1-inch. Some of this stuff is 8 and 10 track tape. Because the other thing George was known as innovation, he was a really good engineer.
Sure.
So George, but from a studio perspective, not just pause, play, and cut, but actually from a complete kind of studio perspective. And here's another one. Boom. So this one is Sugar Lump and Attempted Love.
All right.
You got too much stuff over there.
I got too much stuff over here, man. You can't get it out. It's not here, though. Hey, and that one sued me. It's not here, though. It's in climate-controlled, secure storage. It ain't here. But check this out. So one of the cool things about the archive, man, we're literally a study of these tape, shelf life durations, man, because we're pushing shelf lives. And what was really dope is to get these 434s, these 8 and 10 track 434s, like the first gen ones, because it went red then gray, these kind of. And actually, it's funny because there's only 2 machines in the U.S. that we know of that can transfer this tape. One of them came from Original Sound. sound which someone, we know had acquired their tape machine and actually was able to transfer this tape. And there was another hallmark. George worked with greats, man. Bernie Grundman, Paul Buff. So he always, alongside his own engineering, he always worked with really talented people,
Nick.
And so that's
question
and then
for
so
Huh?
Go ahead.
after, so no, the Johnny Taylor stuff you can see on Watt Stacks. So George was kind of lucky because even though they didn't videotape a lot because we played with, he's in like Soul Train season 1, episode 18. The Johnny Taylor scene in Lonnie's on the Hill in the performance in the movie Watt Stacks. That's actually George and James Gatson, Al McKay, who George influenced and played with. And it's interesting that, George was so productive when he would hook up with these guys, it wouldn't be one band, like with Brenton. So with Brenton, Funk Proof, Brenton had his comeback, and Funk Proof was his backing band. Well, Funk Proof became a band, and we actually put out their unreleased LP that a collector from in Japan had turned us on to and helped us put this together. Shout out Mr. Richard Cavazos. He's missing from here. He's an amazing guitarist. But but it wasn't just Funk Proof. They also had United Soul Association, which Al McKay was in, Brother Puff Johnson, beautiful guy. He's really like George's spiritual advisor and played with him his whole life. Mary Love performs on that. And that's sort of George's connection to Northern Soul. That's what I was showing you earlier. Right. This actually was just released by Kenneth. We just recently released this in October. This was for the 100 Club 42nd anniversary. It's the first time they had missed an anniversary, so it was beautiful. And this is a real honor for that record to be pushed to that esteem. And we did a few releases with Kent, and what's great is, and Kent Ace, and they all revolve around George being a part of like early soul music and, associating him with some of these other greats that he played with. He was interested, here's modernity. So George is kind of known on the mod scene, really fascinating, man. And so, I think that's why George was so unique, is because he wasn't just a musician, but he was also a producer, a writer, a arranger. He could get deals done. So 73, George starts playing a lot of live music because that's what was happening back then. They were getting paid playing live. He was recording a little bit less. He did a couple of things. One was this album. We reissued this on ARC Records. We reissued about 15 projects in the last 3 years. This was a wonderful reissue. We're so grateful for them. Yeah, for Giles Peterson and the team over there to get behind this guy. Mother Tongue actually manufactures beautiful, sustainable, OBI, the whole nine. Just a beautiful, beautiful project. And the players on here are remarkable. This is something else. We did a 45 kind of promo to it with Dynamite Cuts. But one of the things that's amazing about George, or what he's known for, is that he put on a lot. He was known for A&R. He put on a lot of young artists. So on that album, for example, Jimmy Hayes, who's from the Persuasions, and Frank Zappa signed him later. Troy Raglan is on that, his first real recording. Well, he'd done a 45 right before this, and that's how George met him at Capitol. But he's from Space Arc. He would go on to do all the Space Arc stuff. There's just remarkable players on it, man. Barbara Morrison. We were talking about that stuff. Oh, here's another. Here's your boy Brenton. This is Union. This he has to take for some of Union's tracks. Union is a banging ass band. It was Brenton, George, Al McKay, like fucking James Gatson. It was like ridiculous.
What?
Because all those guys, George was a little bit older than those guys, so he was like influenced. He was already like solid 30s. They're like late 20s, so he's able to get deals done with Lonnie Simmons. So now he's playing live. George was a musical director of Total Experience Nightclub, which would go on to become Total Experience Records. Well, George booked all the musicians and everything. So the Gap Band, all those guys were playing with George all the time. And, George helped them start. He started the production company with Lonnie. And then the recording studio, he helped negotiate that with Ron Cass, a Beatles manager. So a lot of people don't know, like a lot of those hits like Gap Band, Switch, Goody, DJ Rogers, they were recorded at the Beatles US studio, the same place the Beatles recorded in the United States. So it's like incredible history behind that studio anyway.
Yeah.
And so
quick question for you.
Yeah.
So you shared a lot with us about, the chronological order of the work and everything like that. But what I would really love to know, out of all the musicians that he's come in contact with, what do you think are his 3 biggest milestones, whether it be composer, producer. What do you think they are?
Man, and I don't want to sound cliche, but I think that's really difficult with George because he had so many accomplishments, man, in all those areas. So it's, for me, I see his achievements. I think he would say the same thing because we kind of had a conversation about this. It's difficult when you've played with the best, you've influenced the best, you've been a part of the most successful labels, you've just done all these amazing things, right? And especially, I think, kind of given Jordan's, background. And again, like I said, these guys are doing it for the first time, man. You're talking about nostalgia, and it's cool to see people. And you see the divergence. Like, for example, in Watt Stacks, you see where the Barcades come out. And then you're like, oh, this is on. But this is on something different versus Rance or versus the older guys. And George is actually in that with Stax Golden 13, Old Time Religion. But, everybody else is doing acid, So it's like, so I think it really is more overriding. A lot of it, man, are the samples. So it's really like, and there's another reason I say that, brother, because some of the best musicians you've never heard of that George played with, David Majal I, who's actually on this album, people that you don't even know you've heard, that played with the Pointer Sisters, like made them big, or all these backing bands. So most of the names you wouldn't even know, like Tony Drake, Basie Johnson, but he's known with musicians and so forth. As far as like public figures, interestingly, and I know you can appreciate this brother, Soul Tunes, because you got the females on lead. Is he did a lot with females, Mary Love, Mary Clayton, Barbara Morrison, and he would put them on lead. He would put them on lead. So oh, here you go. I had this one for you. Barbara Morrison, and this is through different decades. So one of them is that George went through these different decades. The 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and he had successes in all of them. He played with players in all of them. So. That's what I would say. I would say his legacy would revolve more around innovation, urban creative entrepreneurialism, and longevity of sort, and fusion as far as music, because the music they played became our contemporary music. They came of age. They were 30. George was like 27 when electric basses first came. And an old musician, a super wise guy, Mr. Basie Johnson, he told me what happened, Joel, was how funk came about, and even how certain aspects of soul developed, was that the bass went electric so we could make it louder, so the drum could be louder, and this could be louder. The keyboard.
When it comes, when it comes to drums and samples, I just had a question for you because I was I heard when I heard the first sample, that I know that he's been sampled. Your sample was the Making Waves album, the drums. But I mean, he must have had a load of people sampling him.
Well, and you make another good point. A load of incredible musicians on those stems. One of the things, it's been a tough couple of years for everybody, but one of the things we were able to do to archive is we were able to get much more archive of our multi-tracks. So able to get the stems out named properly. You wouldn't believe Brenton's. You wouldn't believe Brenton's instrumentals. You'd be like,
I'm sure.
What? Like, and even though, there were some things, we just transferred a whole bunch of old tapes from the Kingsmen, some of his first tapes. If you check my IG, look at the first post. Bomb shit, man. Like things people weren't even, these guys were the innovators. And that's why, again, I think George gets some credit for being one of the godfathers of Barry of Funk. He produced Rodney Franklin around that time too for one of his first recording. He's like 14 years old. So, it was that innovation and sort of lending it open. Yeah. What's that?
We're talking early 60s now?
Early 70s.
Early 70s. All right.
Yeah, more early 70s. He was around then, but like more early 70s stuff, Music City stuff, and Berkeley, stuff like that. Sorry, guys. Sorry about that. But yeah, so that's what I would say. And then and then I think also, like I said, the innovation came through on the sampling because making waves, man, and those guys really getting the quality of the material, not knowing how much is behind it. He's portrayed very urban. Tremendous amount of development went into creating George as an artist. you know, from his family, mother investing, the community he was in. So you're hearing this level of skill dressed down in this kind of cool urban, you know, kind of package. And that music became global music culture. So that is really the true significance. It's a way people live mainstream today that these guys created, and actually that music generated and influenced and created, essentially. You know?
That's a great segue to question 5. Nick, I'll let you take that.
Sorry?
That's a great segue to question number 5.
I'm not with you now because I've been so mesmerized.
That's okay. I got it. No, it's all good. I know exactly.
It's Semper magic at work.
So here's what I'd really like to know. We talked about the samples, but what I would love it if you could do is share where we might have heard the samples. Who has sampled his music?
Okay. Absolutely, man. Well, I'd say some of the most the early guys who were really sharp, you know, Large Professor, Pete Rock, DJ Muggs. So DJ Muggs actually used it on Cypress Hill, Insane in the Brain. So again, innovation, because that was actually a song that brought a lot of American Latinos into the fray and so forth around that time. It's very impactful, I think, in their kind of space within hip hop in particular. And then actually Pete Rock on Mecca and the Soul Brothers. Soul Brother, Act Like You Know, man, one of the greatest albums of all time. Can't believe he was on it. Chi Ali sampled him. A ton of people, man. I mean, and so that album, I think it was something like 18 samples. Alchemist sampled it, maybe not that long ago. He sampled it in, I think, 2007. But a lot of MC Search did on Back to the Grill Again. That was one of the first songs Nas was on. It sampled on that. I mean, so George was really blessed. Something he was very proud of. And he was about 40 something when he was actually like 45 or 6 at that time, or 8. You know, so that was one of the things he was very proud of. And a couple of years ago, we were sampled by DJ Daphne, man, a really dope Canadian DJ for his EP Sizzling. And he's down with Fortet and those guys. Okay. And we're on this song Just. And it's fire, man. He sampled the little things. It's the little things. So it's a real honor, you know, to be able to continue that, especially in another genre. And then Perfect Circle was sampled. This was sampled by YG. This was sampled by a whole lot of people. I mean, this was in the movie in Orbit, you know. And this is Perfect Circle. Really interesting story we got to talk about. But this is Inner City Records, you know, George's label. And I know we talked about showing some things. Let me just do this real quick.
Real quick, before you show that.
Okay, my bad.
No, it's okay. It's okay. There's something that's really important that you kind of put me onto that I would really love to highlight. And as I've listened to George's music, I think there's something to be said about the way that he was using sound effects, sampling different noises on songs. And I'd love it if you could give the story about the Train and Gap Band, because that blew my freaking mind.
Well, and if you listen to this, you'll hear where it came from, because this is the Modernity, which is a CD that's out from Ace. And I know it's CD format, but it's got a song on there by the Kingsmen backing up. And H.B. Barnum was actually involved with that project called Monkey Walk. And they started with a hilarious monkey sound. And so this was something these guys did very innovative. We have a song actually where George is beatboxing in the 70s, like real beatboxing. It's called Never in My Life. Troy Ragland's on that one. But what George did is that when he worked with Lonnie Simmons in the 70s, and we're talking about 73, 74, when he, was at Total Experience Studios and Records and so forth, he influenced all those groups at Total Experience with sound effects. And some of them that they used, like with Brenton in the group United Soul Association, was a rooster in the beginning. And then a train, they used a train in this song, Sticky Boom Boom 2 Coke.
Yes.
You hear almost the exact same train in Party Train by the Gap Band.
It's like identical.
Yeah. You hear the rooster in Early in the Morning, because George was influencing those guys. They were in their 20s. They were in like their 25, 24. George was like 34, bones hard, made $1 million already. Everybody knew who he was, worked with everybody. He was, playing with Al McKay, motherfucking James Gasson on the drums. Like, these dudes are little boys, man. You know what I'm saying? They're the next generation. Right. So that was like, that's where they, they would pick up on that stuff. And they, they work together. He influenced him. He shared a lot with a lot of musicians. They really have a lot of respect for George. One guy told me, he said, before George Semper, we never got paid for sound check. He said, after George Semper, we got paid for sound check. That was Uncle Bob. Bob is a real cool guy. Bob Farrell. He's actually,
I know that name.
Bob Farrell's with the Young Hearts, Top 10. We just transferred some of their tapes. Actually, they're covers, but they're banging. It's a little cassette we did with things like it's like an iPhone box. Strictly cassette did such a beautiful job with this. And they let us tell the story. And this here is Bob Farrell. Bob Farrell's a former musical director for the Temptations. He just retired. And he still played. And he was a lifelong collaborator to my dad. That's Ray Johnson, Brother Puff. He's no joke. There's Basie Green. There's Mary Love. So we tell the stories, man. It's part economic, but it's largely historical. And so we want to be that archive. You got the song sheet. You got the,
Yes.
And so we tell these stories, man, in the liner notes. And we've been blessed that our label partners have let us do it, to be honest.
Yeah. Speaking of history, I caught clips. Soul Train. Tell us about it.
The Soul Train?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, it's interesting because that's why I like, I love the performance of Watt Stacks with him, because you get, with Johnny Taylor, because you get a better sense of what they were doing, and how it was going down. Right. So Soul Train, George, they were real funny about artist images then. And that was one of the things that led George to do his own thing. He wanted to be free. Right. And so, because he'd done a label deal and all this stuff. And so he on Soul Train, he's on the Johnny Taylor episode, and he's got his back to the crowd. He's playing the organ with his back to the camera and literally to the crowd. There was some issue with like his image ownership, or we don't know. It's just really weird, or he just didn't want to be seen. He was like that. They were the opposite of today. It's amazing. They were real DL. Basie Johnson told me a story about a big venue they played at Whiskey A Go Go. And that's around the time with Joanne Vint, because he met Joanne Vint at A&M. Because Joanne backed up everybody. And George didn't want to be seen. That's it, man. George and Joanne. Dynamite Cut. Shout out Malachi Trout, man. Some real vision to bring that one. But that, that's also a commemorative record to Malachi, to some stuff, and just a real memory around that record. My mom had passed away, and so the record meant a lot to us for what it represented, because she was white soul. And a lot of times we think of ourselves more contemporarily as, we have all these race problems. People worked that out a long time ago. It's all a mirage, It's all so, and then they proved that. And that was the other thing I love about George's work, is that he worked with everyone. Right. I mean, from day one. And there's influences. You hear the Latin influence, you hear the Filipino influence and some stuff. Yeah. There's a song called Tijuana that they did, so it's like, but and then women as well, females as well, but across the spectrum. So
this was one of the ones that really was kind of like the precursor for Joanne, if I'm not mistaken. And when you hear, the side that George sings on, there's this innocence. It's very pure. And then you hear the flip with Joanne, and you can literally imagine how he helped her elevate to the next level.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
What stands out to you about this one? Because you said this was personal, but I'd love if you could share it with us.
Yeah, absolutely, man. No, I mean, I think a part of what you said, because it demonstrates, you don't find a lot of records. A lot of people try to call them a passion projects and this kind of thing, when they're really not. It's really giving you more of a view of us as an archive. I'm not a DJ. I'm not a big ass collector. I have my view, which is the archive. So giving us having an opportunity to present something that showed the production process, especially with George's arrangement background, writing background, and development background actually in the studio, and that being something that's, kind of a keystone, of his achievements, again, is this kind of production capability and prowess and that complete capability. And you really get to experience that within that little package in that 45. And then, Joanne, of course, she went on to do a lot of great things, but to me, it kind of has a lot to do with it, because she's another unsung artist. She passed away in 96. And, she kind of represented a lot. There's a little bit of a shadow on some of this stuff now, but like if you look at our feed, you can see the Playboy segment where she's performing "Get Out of My Life, Woman,"
Which is
and
awesome.
yeah, man, and so you're getting a sense of how jazz and rock and folk. She has some incredible material, man. But you see the early influence of that, like for example, because George contributed to folk rock too, but Joanne did her rendition of Midnight, no, Daytime Hustler. Bette Midler heard it because Joanne was like a demo artist, and a lot of the artists George worked with were demo artists, but he worked with the best, and so they were people that typically would have been A-list, but they just they probably didn't hit or whatever. And that was the case with Joanne at A&M. And her cover of Daytime Hustler, her demo of it, caught Bette Midler's attention, and that was one of the reasons Bette Midler's first album was so successful. Is Bette Midler did the version of it, but Joanne was known for that. Same thing with Patty Williams, Candy Ray. I mean, there's a whole list of people George worked with who were amazing. Sister Gail Anderson is like fire,
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's really I think what it is in the female element as well. The non sort of the universal aspect to it. Is having them work together. This white woman, this black man. In 1972 America at A&M Records. And the song getting shelved because it didn't come out then, so it was unreleased. Her album did not. The black and white of it is the blues. It didn't do real great, but it's an amazing album. Her 45s are fire. Like she did a lot of James Brown covers and stuff, but really, really good though.
I'll tell you what also stood out to me about this cover, and this dates back to artists like Mongo Santamaria, and you can see it across a lot of records in the 60s. Oftentimes, they would not put a musician of color on the record. Instead, they would maybe have women dancing, white women and men dancing. But most of Mongo Santamaria's records, you don't see him on the cover. Very few, if at all. So I thought it was really authentic and intentional how because this is what it would have potentially been like. Right?
That's right. That's right.
Seeing Joanne on the cover. And
that's right. And George and Joanne is a little bit provocative. It's like, okay, what does that mean? There's a wonderful story George told me. But go ahead.
I love this record. I want to hear this.
You're going to ask me a question later, so I'm saving it. But that record, no, man, that record's dope. And I'll tell you something. I'd spoken to Richard Marx. No, not Richard Marx. That was one of her ex-husbands, or had been Joanne's husband. And they were no joke. I mean, their career but I'd spoken with a couple other publishers to try to get some other songs that we don't have. Because I think we had 2 songs of Joanne's. We have 2 songs. The other one hasn't been released. So, and we did this, like I said, we did this way for that kind of specific purpose to be more of an archival thing. And Malachi, Dynamite Cuts, they had that vision to do that. I mean, everybody we've worked with has been very visionary. A lot of them have been UK labels and so forth. We've worked with some awesome labels here in the US as well. But we got some things coming up with a label in Austria with, Candy Ray. And I'll give you a hint. I'll give you one hint.
You got a lot of those boxes.
Yeah, man.
That's Wally Hyder's studio, bro. But that's what I'm saying about George recording in the spots, So, but we do have, a couple of things coming up. We have a 7 more projects for this year. I think they're going to kind of run together. Okay. And we've done about 15. We've done about 15 releases in the past 3 years. We haven't reissued entire albums. That was kind of the point too, because we have so much in the vault. Oh, thanks. Thank you. Producer Big Stacks. What's good, brother? But yeah, so it didn't make sense to waste it. It's like this Joanne demo. Why would you waste that? You know what I'm saying? It's like fire. Like, so let's, what's a format that collectors are going to dig? People are going to dig. We're not trying to put it out as like $1,000 record. We know it's not that kind of show. Production is very tight, as you guys know. So it's like, let's get the most out of this and really bring it home. And all these projects have been the same. The Funk Proof project has an inserted download card with interviews from the surviving band members telling how it went down.
You should have pressed that on vinyl.
Well, we did already. Actually, I got to send you a download card. This is the one. Yeah, and actually, what was dope about this project is we did multiple variants. So we did that with Tidal Waves Music, but we have multiple variants.
I
We
like
have a highlight.
variants.
We have a highlight marker yellow. We have the gold, which is light in the attic, and we have the neon, which is fat beats. So it's a
Oh,
really interesting the way those guys get down on production. Real brilliant guys, like masterful producers, and great releases. And they let us tell the story. And you know what's interesting? I just want to throw this out there for our label bosses. A lot of times, cats don't want to change their format. These guys went with it, and they let us tell the story on the insert. And it's the dopest shit you'll ever read in life, right?
I
And
love that.
there it is. But it
I
was tough for them
love
at
that.
first because like they don't do that. So they're kind of like, well, and then when they've gone for it, now they do it. They do it with a lot of their releases. We're
Yeah.
trying to bring that old school back because, like I said, a big part for us is historical. And if we can bring that, we want to do it. They did the same thing. Art did the same thing with uh, Inner City Review and Inner City Sounds too. I mean, these guys Ubiquity was instrumental in George and I reconnecting. Shout out Mike McFadden. You know, and they did a wonderful project. This was actually he and Andrew Jarvis from Bandcamp.
My
And
want
so
list
this
is growing by the
2003
second.
compilation, but they told the story. I mean, George was, like I said, man, George was mad modest, so he didn't really tell the story like with, all the sparkles, and he was like, hey, it was like, and he reinvested a lot, man. He paid a lot of rent. Let me put it to you that way.
Mm-hmm.
So
But
you held up a microphone before. It was a little premature for show and tell, but it's right about time for show and tell now.
okay, so let's do this. So this is George's original mic. This is the same one that's in this photograph with Jimmy
Whoa!
Smith.
All right.
You live in a
He and
museum.
Jim, he and Jimmy were lifelong friends. Well, I'll tell you what's amazing. This little logo here, the same one. I have the same earbuds now. It's hilarious. From this to earbuds. But see, that's what was dope about George being a Hammond B3 hero was their technology, man, was crazy. I mean, to be able to go in the studio and actually come out with something was like, but
Right.
again, he's been great for that. Well, some of the stuff that's kind of interesting. Uh, got a few of these. I don't know if anybody in the market, anybody need any perfect circle? What's good? Like, what's
Me.
good? I see you, big stack. I see you, big stack. Boy, you better watch out, boy. Big stacks ain't bullshitting, son. Hold up. Big stacks. I got home, and I'm so grateful. Thank you, all you collectors. I want to thank a lot of DJs. I want to thank Sweater Funk. Sweater Funk let me come out and play these records banging. Like, for example, guys, let me scoot forward a little bit. Well, let me show you a couple things. Here's a couple really real nice snappers. This is like Calvin Romance. George had hooked up with Jimmy Smith, and they reactivated Jimmy Smith's label in the 80s. And they released all of these California artists, really amazing artists like Tina Jackson. Boy, isn't she stunning? Her
Yeah.
material is fire, man. And so they released like 5 or 6 artists, her, Calvin Romance, and they're just really bomb. 45s, largely, no albums. But again, I thought it was kind of interesting that it was he and Jimmy Smith
Sure.
that hooked back up after all those years. And they released like 8 records. They're all rare vinyl, like all of them. These are kind of dope. Here, actually, these are a little crooked, but there were 2 masters from this group called Command Performance. It's a huge boogie funk record. It's something like, I don't know, $1,000 for the EP, something along those lines. The 45 is, so this is the band, really great guys. Most of them are alive. They were a younger band. Tina was a part of that band, but this was the master. There were 2 versions of it. One's on the market. One has never been released.
What?
This is the one. This is the one that's never been released. It was mastered by Bernie Grundman. So this is the final mix master of this
What?
incredible boogie funk material, but it gets even better. They never use the labels. These are the original labels from a 1984 boogie funk record that is like a grail, bro. Like a lot of George's stuff are grails. So our plan is, to reissue and use that. You know what I mean? Put the original labels, make it big. We have a lot of memorabilia, a lot. Like we have just all kinds of stuff, even buttons. original buttons. The original buttons were actually made by Floyd Mayweather's manager, who used to work with the label owner from this label, who was very gracious, wonderful gentleman, interesting gentleman, which the archiving process has been interesting because these are lines, man. So a lot of them are like old lines. These are people who were amazing in their youth, their whole life.
Right.
So like dealing with them is really, it's very dynamic, man. Now I get access because of my father. I mean, that's really, at the end of the day, that's it. Because these guys have like done and seen everything, and most of their friends have passed. They're just like, what do you want? Okay. What do you want from me? Do you have the masters? All right. It's like, yeah. It's like, stuff like that. Like, it's crazy. It's like, well, I got these records. You want these? There's like 20 copies of like, something insane. I hook people up too. I just hooked up a Japanese collector with a Pure Funk copy of Pure Funk original from the artist, stuff like that. And we got some cool projects coming too this year, man. We have something in the, I can't say too many details, but think this way, Tax Shelter album. Dude, I met the king. I met the king of Tax Shelter Records, and he put me down on everything. And he'd done a project with George where it turns out the record is the most valuable and sought after of all the Tax Shelter records the guy released. It's like $1,500.
Can you tell us what that is? Can you explain the whole theory behind the Tax Shelter records?
I will. I can't tell you what record it is because I don't want to let it back.
I don't want that. I just want people to know.
Well, what it is that, so Jimmy Carter, he passed a law through the tax code that allowed you to have deductions, write-offs for businesses. And one of them he included was record labels. So all the accountants and shit, they immediately jump on and they go, wait a minute, for every dollar you spend, you'll get 10 back, basically as a deduction. So they're trying to offset all these costs, and they got all this dirty money and trying to tell them where it came from. And so basically this group gets together. They use a really well-known sound library that's amazing, because in those days of sync licensing, they would like go to the sound library and give the guy like $200 and like take the songs they wanted for the film. It was crazy. I mean, the publishers would get paid, but I don't think there was all the money in the masters, And so the masters weren't viewed like with the same, they were viewed with a lot of value for those that knew, but it was just a different game than on the masters, right? Yeah. And so they would make these records, and they would just take all this material they got from these different masters, but good material, and they would put it together. A lot of the guys that did it, they were musicians themselves and producers, like this one gentleman I'm telling you about. And then they would press up the records, they'd create a group, make up song titles. Nobody gets credit, no credit. This says all the songs belong to copyright holders. And then they press them all up. They do the sleeves. They use clip art to do the sleeves, like early clip art, bro. And then they'll put them in the warehouse and leave them. And just deduct them. They said they couldn't sell them. It's hard to sell records anyway. Back then you could imagine, but like we couldn't sell them. So they would get this huge deduction. Well, it would turn out that there's a big genre, actually, Tax Shelter records that are very good because I'll show you something. Their material, like, I'll show you something. So a couple days ago was Bunny Siegler's birthday, right? Right?
Mm-hmm. All right.
Can you see that name?
It's backwards.
Make it out. You can do it.
W-A.
Dexter Wanzel.
Uh-huh.
Right?
I quit.
So
I quit.
There's memorabilia too, bro. So, but the thing is, there's a lot of fire artists on this stuff that were young guys sending their music around trying to get, just like you do today, where you email to a playlist or whatever. And George did that, but he marked his songs. He did something with the audio where he'd always be able to track it. It was really smart. And so that's how we identified it. I actually hit up a friend of mine. I'm not going to say who. I can't say who. I hit up a friend of mine. I said, do you know about this record? He said, dude, we've been looking for that record for 20 years. I said, well, when you were with me in the vault, you held it in your hand. And then the whole B-side is George. George is a B-side king, by the way.
I love B-sides.
He's a B-side king. You heard it doesn't seem so. Yeah, I mean, you heard it doesn't seem so long ago, and all those tracks with that George did actually. But so that was the thing. And so recently we had a pretty innovative label partner, and we talked about being able to do something with this. And I was blessed. I got to interview the gentleman that was the label owner that did all this stuff. He's like in his 90s. It was an amazing interview. He's done an interview before, but it's been a while. And I got to get him to kind of, You know, he don't care now. He's like 92. He's like, God damn it, I did. Oh, sorry. He said, I did it. He said, "You damn right, I'll do it again." He does, you know, but he's a great guy, man, beautiful guy, and he's a very accomplished musician as well.
Did you
But it
release
was
that
just,
yet?
what's that?
Did you release the interview yet?
No, no, not yet. We're still formalizing we've got everything pretty much formalized with this
Okay.
publisher and all this, but you know, things are still coming together. But it'll
Wow.
be, you know, it'll be really interesting. But that's what the archive's about, man. Here's unissued material you've never heard from these great artists or an unknown, obscure artist backed by great musicians you know about, like Al
Mhm.
McKay. You know, here's the story behind this record. You know, sorry guys, I was going for a moment there, but you know, here's the story behind this record. You know what I mean? Here's a young Al, you know, playing on that, you know, with United Soul Associations. It came together because, and then being able to tell you the story. And it came together because Brent was on his comeback tour. He hooked up with George. George is the man. He can be my musical director. They go recruit Al McKay. They go get Brother Puff. They go get Mary Love, Queen of Northern Soul, right? And then they make this incredible material. It doesn't even sound like you've heard. Listen to Sticky Boom Boom Too Cold. Go look it
Mhm.
up. There's an extended version. The extended version has a train in it from Party Train in the beginning, right? And so,
Yeah.
which I'm still tripping on how they got that copy. But anyway, but basically, you know, and so that's why, you know, that's what you're hearing. And like I said, you know, I think that's, you know, that's George's legacy, man. It's the innovation, the urban entrepreneurialism, it's the discovery and support of young artists, you know, creating a creative community. George had a home in Baldwin Hills that
Sure.
Marvin Gaye wanted to buy from him, but like it was like a creative space George created with his proceeds from his independent label sales.
Wow.
And you know, learning about the business, being a publisher, and then the music innovation, like I said, and those are the things I would say are, you know, the real legacy of George. And you know, thanks to all these amazing DJs and cats that got it and sampled him, and you know, kept him going, kept his memory going. You know, that of his collaborators, like I said, guys like Basie Johnson, you know, Brother Puff. Um, there's a whole suite of these incredible artists, man. Like I said, a lot of people don't know about, but we're telling people about it through the music. So
Mm.
I've been listening to you talk for 56 minutes now, and not once have you said anything about yourself. And I just want to say that I acknowledge and appreciate all the work that you're doing to unearth this and share it with us. But
Yeah.
more importantly, you're doing it with the history. It's not like you're just putting out records and letting us look at a label and wonder about the past. You're arming us with the information, and you know, it
Yeah.
allows us to connect so much deeper to music. And I don't think anything that you're doing is easy by any stretch, because I know what it's like to try and go and find old records that don't exist, that
Mm.
are in people's basements, and try and uncover the story. And you're doing it. You've been doing it well. So thank
Man, I want, brother, thank you. And I got to thank the collectors, the
you.
label
Sure.
bosses, the community for giving me an opportunity to actually discover more and to share more and being supportive of that. And you know
Yeah.
what? It's given me an incredible, you know, George, again, he was a little bit quieter about a lot of the things that he had accomplished in his musical career
Mm-hmm.
because we did meet a little bit later in life as far as, you know, being able to reconnect. And, a big part of that was spending time with us, but this discovery has been a big part of me getting to know him and to discover him. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of the stories and stuff I've learned have come from other people. They didn't necessarily come from George. And it's
Mm.
kind of interesting because, you know, one of the things he did is he wrote this wonderful book, which I actually have a digital version available if anybody's interested. But it's called 40 Acres of Memories, about where he grew up in San Diego. And it just is the whole history, musical, et cetera. But you know, again, man, I'm just super grateful to everyone that's let me build, you know, has built with us,
Yeah.
and today letting us build on, you know, his legacy and what that means to other artists and you know, to the industry and to the evolution of music. Because George, I think that's another unique thing. George was very blessed to be identifiable link in that, you know, in that chain to sort of global contemporary music culture. You know,
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
thank you, thanks for that, man.
Hey, Nick, uh,
Yeah.
was there a question that you wanted to ask around?
Uh, I think I think we have, or he has, Joel has talked about all the question I had for
That's perfect. That's
in some
perfect.
way or another.
What
Yeah.
what I would love to know is, you know, you talked about lots of music that's already available. We know that stuff is on the way. I would love it if you could kind of tell us what's available now that we can get and where we can shop it. And if you could tell us what we have to look forward to in 22, I think that would be great because I want more now.
Man, you getting more, bro. You got it. And it's funny, somebody real special got my last copy of George and Joanne. I have test copies, but they got my last copy. I had to do it, though. Well, one thing you guys can check out, I'd love you to check out this Kent release, right, with the Shariles on it. Now, it's kind of an expensive record. I mean, this is really an anniversary record. They're only 250 copies pressed.
Yeah.
And
That's
they're
my
kind of
number.
They're $350, but it's worth listening to the material. And like Bessie Simmons is a really interesting woman, and the whole story of the Shariles, we got to talk about it sometime. It's incredible. Some other things you can pick up right now. Anybody can holler at me. You can get a copy of Themes for Television, Sports, and Aerobics on tape, which is really dope. And it's
Unbelievable's on that, right?
What's that?
Is Unbelievable on that?
No, it's not. Not on this one.
Okay.
This might have Universal on it, or Universe on it.
I'm sorry.
But this is,
that was the one.
That's okay. Yeah, this was like a pictorial. You can get CDs too right now, which these are all from Ace Records. But it's cool. Yeah. It's like LA, Los Angeles special, Birth of Soul. So this is fire, man. This is soul fire. This is a lot of song released. It's like unreleased Ike and Tina Turner, like fucking George. I mean, this is part of my language. Really good stuff. Same thing with Modernity. If you like Northern Soul, Modernity from Ace is hot too. And these are very economical CDs, man. They're more like fun listening, but you'd be amazed what's on here, really. Now, in terms of 45s, you can hit up Dynamite Cuts, man. We have, I think we still have some inner city reviews left. And we didn't get a chance to play this. It's pretty funky right here. There's actually a song on here called The Wait that was just unreleased. It's fire. It's a perfect circle. We don't have any promo copies, but, we have the 45s. And, well, we have something else out, too. I think there's a few copies of this, another CD called The Lookout. This one's kind of dope because this is actually rock and soul, garage, psych, and soul from America's Finest City, the San Diego scene, 1958 to 1973. So these are a lot of fire artists, man, that people know about, kind of don't know about. They tended to be more regional. And then later this year, we've got 245s coming from an Austrian label partner, something with Candy Ray and also with Mary Love. Both amazing. I just showed you Mary Love and Candy Ray. Soul singles, man. A little bit different, different styles, but really just fire. And they did a special mix on it. It doesn't sound real good. From Dynamite Cuts, man, Patty Williams. I don't know if Patty Williams. She's got Rare Vinyl Records too on Forward. That was one of Mike Curve's label. Sweet Soul, man. She passed away, but that's coming out a little bit later. 45. We've got the Tax Shelter joint I mentioned to you. That's just like it's just a crazy album. Really good music though, like really good music. And we've got a couple of other things too that are kind of escaping me at the moment, but just really interesting 45s, an album, some CDs. We may have another cassette coming. We may actually do a cassette of The Perfect Circle, which would be fire. This is actually about to be reissued on Dynamite Cuts, so y'all keep an eye out. He's gonna have a few copies of this guy. Things for Television, Sports, and Aerobics. So that'll be coming out later this year as well.
Quick question on the sports themes.
How
did you get Dr. J on the cover?
Oh, man. Well, they were really creative. So there's going to be a reissue of this guy. I think we'll probably end up doing a couple of reissues because they sold out really fast. Like Perfect Circle.
It's super dope.
Well, I don't really, the funny thing about this album, this is a fascinating album. It's been called uneven. It's almost like a library record, but it's because it was in 1984. This album's a couple $100, if it's mint or whatever. This is a sealed copy. But the thing about it is that it was E.T. had just come out, which is the first big blockbuster movie after Jaws.
Right.
And it was also the 84 Olympics. So everything was LA. It was huge. It was global. And so he just did something very unique, and I'm not sure how he got away with this stuff. I spoke to the original artist, Stuart Sachs, because one of the things I wanted to do is when I reissued him, I wanted to use the original artist.
Sure.
And redo it, but do something like collectible. where you could actually have art that'll come off and you could, keep it, or, an insert you could keep. And, some seal. And, but I don't know, man. They just got away with it. But George did everything on this album, man. He produced it, published it, played on it. Mary Love is on this album. Ray Johnson, Carlos Hislop.
The
Oliver
Universe
Moss
track is incredible. It really
Oliver
is.
Moss. Yeah. It's definitely one of the most popular ones. That and E.T. E.T. Where Are You? And Oliver Moss is on this, and he's the guy. He grew up with George, and he's the guy that replaced Sly Stone at K-Soul when Sly Stone left as a DJ, because Sly Stone was a DJ first. And so, it's another guy he knew his life, a real innovative kind of guy. And they actually recorded, check this out. They recorded this kind of stuff. They actually recorded some unbelievable sessions, man. Can you read that name?
Hold it up a little bit.
Right here.
Can't read it.
Gene Jug Ammons. Famous jazz guy. They recorded all these greats in 1970. Lee Morgan. So we have a pretty solid jazz portfolio. There's some more memorabilia I was telling you about. Real cool stuff like press bios. But yeah, but that's what's coming from us this year. And we're working on some other interesting things. We'll see. We're trying to make the most of the archive, kind of all the way around, and the biggest part of that are George's fans. I mean, he lived for his fans, and they're still solid, man. I'm shocked all the time, but it just speaks to his 5-decade career, and every decade something was happening positive. And all the way up till the end, man, that was a very discernible thing about George. He was working on this song. He was so excited about it when we were together. And he'd gone back to Trinidad. He actually passed away in Trinidad. And that's why it wasn't more publicized. He was over there dealing with family land. He got that stuff settled and dealing with different things. And then he passed, had a heart attack. He was fairly young. He was 67. But he accomplished a lot in his life. And he touched a lot of people, man. Yeah, absolutely. And then through hip hop, like I said, generations, and he was very, very happy to license stuff to people and everything else, But here, you want me to spin this? You want me to spin this 45 for you?
I would love that. And I have one more favor. Can you show us that Brenton Wood gem one more time?
Sure. Which one?
It's the one with the cover. The Ugam. Yeah. Unbelievable. What does it say on there? What does it say on the back? Is it just the song?
It's a test pressing. Brent Wood out of the woodwork.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know if
so
there was
it's a test pressing for that album. Yeah, he and Brent. And then this is the master. This is the master recording of that.
I can't believe you have a master to that.
I've got 300, man. I've got 300, brother, like all kinds of stuff. More than that, but we can't. It's been a real challenge transferring all this tape.
Yeah.
And I've gotten very. Some people supported me, but believe me, man, it's been a fascinating experience. I've done it for the collectors and the love of the music and the people and the creatives, because you know what? These guys represent the rise of the creative class. We don't think anything about that today. These guys were the first guys, and they took a lot of risk. Because nobody's going to feel sorry for you if you're some film musician and, in the 80s or 70s.
So I'm going to take the words out of Nick's mouth. We both love a good story. Is there a story that you can share with us just from your experience archiving that would kind of knock us off our feet?
Can you guys hear this?
Little bit.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Sounds really good.
Yeah, Bessie Simmons is amazing, man. She's gonna make it.
Yeah, I can hear it. I can hear it. It's faint, but I can hear it.
Really? Yeah. So as far as the archive, man, gosh, there's so many. It's weird. And again, I don't want to sound cliche, man. I think when I first started going through contracts, and it
Okay.
was like, I know that name. I know that name. It was blowing my mind. I'm like, Brent, Alfred Smith, and who, and and like that kind of stuff. And then I think also the command performance stuff was kind of great when I found the EPs, or I found a case of these. I think I was telling you that, 40 of these in a case, sealed, you know, and just, but, I mean, the masters really, I mean, but then, well, actually, no, I'll give you a good one. I'll give you, and this one actually might be a good example. Yeah, right here. Okay. So seeing stuff that's around my birthday is always unbelievable. There's a few. The songs he did, Don't Be Afraid of Love and
Sure.
Let's Live and Let Live, on my birthday. And so it's
Wow.
wild to see that date. I was born the week before.
Oh.
And I thought about what must have been going through his head as a 27-year-old guy, he's
Wow.
trying to get his work in, and he's doing live shows, and they call him to go to LA, and Mary Clayton's calling him, he's like, he's got the baby, he's like, oh my God, And my mom was like really dynamic person, so he had his hands full there. But yeah, he had his hands full, man. She loved talent, and my mom was a 15th generation American, man.
Okay.
Mom was like, Pilgrim for real, and she was mixed. She had some Indian blood, Native American Indian, Cherokee blood and whatnot. But she took George's hand, and this was something we were talking about earlier, and he said, now, Vanessa, we got to be careful where we hold hands. She said, they'll just have to get used to it. And they proceeded to
Mm.
walk down the strip. But it was that he was actually the first black act booked at Caesar's Palace, for example. And he was a part of the whole Moulin Rouge, he and my mom, the whole Moulin Rouge scene that really elevated black music with Vegas as an incubator to integration. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of black artists, they couldn't gamble, they couldn't eat at the casino, but they could perform there. They couldn't even stay there. They'd have to go to North Vegas to the Sugar Shack and all these other places to actually, in Moulin Rouge, to actually rent rooms and stuff like that. Even big artists. I think the only artist that they could was what's that brother? Nat King Cole. He was like the only dude they would let come in and let gamble, and stuff. Yeah, it's crazy. But and mom helped book that, but then he goes to LA and it's like Black Power and it's fucking, Watt Stacks. So that's irresistible. They go from wearing tuxedos. They go from wearing tuxedos to wearing like the turban he's known for and
Yeah.
sunglasses. So they were already super cool guys though. I mean, I've got tapes where they're having conversations as young men,
Mm-hmm.
like 18 years old. They're mad mature and they're really cool, like the way they're speaking, what they're saying. I'm like, man, I would have been corny to those guys. You know what I mean? Like they wouldn't let me even hang out with them. You know what I mean? They were like cool dudes, man. They could play. So that part has been mind blowing.
Thank you. That's really special, and I think I can only imagine what you thought when you saw the date on some of these things, and you're like, "That's my birthday," and then thinking, at 27 years old, everything that he was doing and going on in his life. You know what I mean? That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's wild.
And that, there's something really powerful about that. Obviously I'm an older man now. I understand things a lot better. I've had challenges with my own sons that are just unbelievable. And so, it's cool though to see that my father invested so much in creative. And that's something I've done a lot in my life as well. And had such a meaningful existence that way and through sort of his own self-expression. I grew up in the South. Where I'm from, they raise soldiers and athletes. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very different experience that my father and I have had. We're very similar though. But the thing is that, he wasn't digging ditches. He wasn't somewhere getting drunk. Well, he probably was, but he was getting buzzed, but he was making money. He was playing, he wasn't just some alcoholic, he wasn't some bullshit, some guy building fences and, digging ditches. It's like, he was actually, creating and innovating. And, I think also in very much is his desire to leave something, not just for the world, but, for us. And so we've been able to have that and share it with the family, share it with, Larry Quechuela, the last of the living original Kingsmen, and his family, like 16 tapes of material of them actually playing, and they actually they were friends with God, who was it that played with them all the time? Saw these famous guys, you know, but um, you know, it's been a real honor to be able to bring that back, give that to collectors, give that to people that are to the labels, the real aficionados, the collectors,
Yeah.
get them the story. Man, that's
Yeah.
just been such a reward, man. All over the world too. Austria, Germany, Spain, Japan,
Yeah.
UK, France, you know, probably more so in the US, but definitely more in the US now. So much good stuff is happening in music now in the
Yeah.
US. The reissues, you know, there's amazing labels. We know who they are, and a lot of new labels doing cool things. Preservation Project's a great example,
Yeah.
where they're, you know, doing found, unknown, obscure, but
Yeah.
really solid, you know, solid stuff.
Right.
So yeah, man. So it's been a lot of fun.
I want to thank you so much for making time to be here with us. I told you we couldn't fit it into, you know, a 45, 50-minute slot. I hope we can come back and do another one and maybe
Yeah.
dive deeper in. But
Absolutely.
this was incredible. I had a feeling it was going to be like this with all the
Um,
artifacts and everything like that. And we learned so much from you today.
Yeah.
You know, I got your back anytime you need anything, but I definitely want to welcome you back anytime.
Thank you, man. And I want to thank you guys too for what you're doing, man. And to see your development and see you get it. Some of these guys that are amazing, like Scheme and, you know, Kenny Dope and Malachi, and just like people really putting us on, man, to the culture. And I'm so grateful that, you know, the culture's been able to embrace you and, you know, just like they've embraced me and actually be able to take this to another level. So thank you, man, for both you guys for your dedication and your releases too, man. Your issues, Soul Tunes. You gotta keep bringing that heat now.
Yeah. I'm doing my best, man.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
doing,
I know you are, man.
yeah,
I know
man.
you are. We can always chat. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Holler at
yeah,
me.
yeah. Of course. Yeah, man.
All right, brother. All right,
Gentlemen,
guys. Thank you so
are
much,
there any
man.
last minute words you'd like to say to our viewers before we take off?
I don't have anything in particular other than thank you guys, man. Thanks for tuning in. The ones that stayed with us, the ones that just checked in, and
Yeah.
you know, keep checking us out, man. Check out our feed. We have our feeds are kind of condensed, so there's a lot of story there. So you can go through one feed and have a whole experience, you know. And we're keeping that coming. And keep an eye out for the George Semper Music Archives, man. We're you know George Semper, obviously, and you know, but keep an eye out for us. Absolutely, our website's doing through an update, coming back online, and you know, just let's keep it going, man, and keep enjoying the music. We're gonna keep bringing you innovative stuff, man.
I love that. Nick, any
Yeah.
last words?
Huh?
Any last words?
No, I mean, this is just a lot to digest. So we should definitely do a part two of this.
We
No
got a
doubt.
whole slew of
Absolutely.
part twos on the
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, man, I can bring on some OGs too. We can do some real, you know, creative stuff now. They kind of have a basis. You know, we can bring some of these guys on. I've been meaning to do a couple interviews, and I have one like with Tony Hyde, actually from the Mean Machine, singing the song. You know, like stuff like that, like just real cool stuff. For some of these guys are still around, it might be interesting. Or you know, if we do a release and these guys are on it, maybe bring them in. We're getting ready
Home
to do this
team.
thing.
You
Yeah,
don't even have to
absolutely.
ask twice.
There's also like Robbie Love, Sister Robbie Love, Mary Love's daughter, who's just amazing and been very supportive
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So it would be real cool, you know.
I
Yeah.
got you 100. All you got to do is hit me in the DM. You got my phone. You know what to do.
You know the routine.
Yeah. All right,
All
everybody.
right, bro, man.
They're about to
Boom.
kick us out. We're 17 minutes over the hour. They're flashing the lights in here, so I gotta go. I
Gotta
want to
go.
thank y'all for viewing. I want to thank you, Nick. I want to thank you, Joel. Waxville in Seattle, Washington. We are out.
Thanks.
See ya.
Boom. Thank you, brother.
Thanks.